It's quiet one online tonight. We've got Norway in the house. Thanks for joining us, love. All right. How's everybody doing? Good. Do you start?
What we spoke about earlier is that last week at the second half we kind of opened up and heard from people a bit more, and we just thought it'd be nice to start this week with if anyone wants to share what they've been hearing, if they've got any questions, or if anything that's come to them. Because it was quite nice having the interaction and hearing from people. And I think you don't realise sometimes that your questions or your stories can actually really help other people. So we'd start with that this week.
Because we've been busy with that, haven't we? We haven't had a chance to come up with a title. And
I didn't even put it on Facebook this week.
So we just thought it'd be nice to hear from people how this has kind of shown up in their lives. And Sam, it was beautiful last week. Sam, it was beautiful last week.
Special.
I found that out. It was a really special one for us too, for Jenny and I. So thank you. Thank you. We'd love to hear from people. And if anybody's interested in just sharing how it's helped them in their life and observations, insights, or anything like that, we'd love to hear.
Sam was round at my house today, helping me with a few jobs. And I've been around a long time. Anyway. And I was amazed at her understanding, just some of the things that she was coming out with and the phrases, and it was so enlightening. And, it's like teacher becomes pupil and pupil becomes teacher. It was amazing. You never stop learning and hearing things. And she showed me this little book that she was doing. And I'm thinking, wow, just look what her understanding is now. Is awesome. It's really. It's just nicely, we said it's not the destination, it's the journey. Every day, every minute, every second. Thank you.
That is beautiful. There's something that just came to mind as you said that. Excuse me. We've just been working with a young lad these last 3 days. We just finished with him today, and like talking about that learning thing, it was something that occurred to me a few months ago now. It was just, I realised nobody's ever taught me anything. Sounds arrogant. You can't teach me nothing. You can't tell me anything. I don't mean like that. I really don't mean it like that. And this isn't an arrogant observation. If this is flower arranging or art, what was it? They're the noisiest people on the planet. I don't know, it's something like that. I can't remember, but the noisiest people. We sound like they're a proper laugh. But origami coming up. That is a noisy activity. But I was thinking to myself about this. I don't know, it just occurred to me about learning. What is it to learn? What is it to learn? Hell is it? That is one thing that we do throughout our lifetime is we learn stuff, we remember, we realise. And what hit me was, nobody can teach us anything. We learn. And the reason why I say that is, I spoke to this lad about this, because I wanted him to get a sense of, we can come to these conversations and we can sit down and listen, expecting the learning to be given to us. But there is absolutely nothing that is given to us apart from words. Okay, there are words, and on a more subtle level, there's an energetic exchange. But learning always comes through our consciousness. So, for example, I said to this kid, I remember sitting down with my mathematics teacher and him repeatedly telling me the same thing over and over again. he was telling me he was a guide. He was a guide to help me wake up to the nature of this mathematical problem, to the nature of algebra, I think it was. Wake up to the nature of algebra. And he pointed it out over and over and over and over and over and over again. He could not teach me it. I had to realize. I had to wake up within my consciousness. That thought had to develop within my consciousness and present itself as it's like this. Yes, Dave, it's like that. Right, I understand that now. I get that. Okay, great. All learning is coming through us. And there is never a point of time, there's never a single moment where it is not our expression of consciousness learning through thought. So yeah, it's beautiful, because once we start off on this, I remember sitting down with you as well, when you first introduced this to me, and we used to bounce ideas off each other, and it was beautiful, really special, treasured times. But it's beautiful once you start to point your awareness in this direction. It is phenomenal what comes, and the learning and the development. This is the exciting part. You cannot get to the end. There is no end to learning about this. It's only, everybody's just at the beginning. The whole of humanity is just at the beginning. It's like one of the things Sydney Banks said, and it hit me like a ton of bricks when I awoke to it, was, I remember waking up to this and going, we're only scratching the surface. If humanity all gathered together and we could collectively put our minds together into a ball, no, it's not even scratching the surface of consciousness. Consciousness is infinitely powerful. It creates universes. It creates dreams of lives, and everything that we perceive, it is just beautiful. So thank you for that, sir. Thank you. I think that's a beautiful point. The learning that comes.
So I had a big insight last Thursday when you was on about the pen. I always say, like, you know, like I said to Lisa, it's weird how we're all connected. But then Dave said something about, well, to be connected, that means you have to be separate. There's like a disconnection, which leaves us this massive thing saying, all right, we are the pen. There's no disconnection. To be disconnection is separate from whatever it is. And we're not connected, we are it. We're all it. And it was just this feeling, just oneness. And I got it on a different level. And I've heard you say stuff like that before. It's like you say, like the algebra. You can read it and read it and read it until it makes sense. And it's the people who say the same thing over and over again. And then suddenly you hear it differently. And it's like, and then you can read the words, or you can say this sentence, and all of a sudden it just means, it's exactly the same sentence, but it means something to you that's completely different.
That's right.
And then you can't go back then. You can't hear it differently. Because once you've heard it that way, it's like, that's what he meant. It's not as thick as it looks.
It's not as thick as he thinks it is. Yeah, I remember we had a chat about that on Sunday, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, when you start to wake up to that, when you start to wake up to that point, it is this never-ending learningness. Anna, is this annoying your ears as I do that? I'm trying to lift it up and turn it. Kind, Anna. It's interesting because when an individual starts to find that they're like, I think this is what I said. I said it's not like we're connected, because to connect is a dualistic state. You can connect many, you can connect two. But when an individual wakes up and realizes it's not that we're connected, everybody is exactly the same thing, showing up in a different manner. A different expression of the same thing. Our mind poses many thoughts and questions, produces many thoughts and questions, but it's always the mind. Okay, the mind will show up in an infinite amount of ways. It will show up in pictures, in words, in sentences, thoughts. It's always a singular mind. Now, this is on a macro scale. Is that the right way? Yeah. This took me a long time to like really scratch the surface of again. Because again, you see deep, do you? How do you know? I see shallow. I only see shallow, do you? How do you know? How can you measure depth in infinity? You can't. And it's like when I personally got to wake up to what I got to wake up to, and what made sense to me in that moment was the entire universe is a dream state. Not mine. Because mine is an ego, story, a bunch of memories. When you look at yourself, and you actually really look at yourself, and somebody asks you, who are you, what do you do? You tell them all the stuff about the past. You look back in your memories and you go, I'm this, and this. Oh, yeah. Ask yourself that 10 years before, what were you? Well, I was this, and this. So you're not any of that. Nobody is. That was one of the things that hit me so hard. My ego is memories. The ego of Dave is a ball of memories. Even the fact Dave, well, that's a memory. I remembered my name. I'm not Dave, I'm not a noise. I'm not this, I'm not that. None of us are. We were working with this kid today, and God bless him, these last 3 days he came with these bits and pieces and worried about what people thought of him. For 3 days we tried to help him, we tried to point and guide him to look within himself to find that he is none of these stories. None of us are these stories. And his stories were ones of depression and anxiety and worry and fear around what people thought, and he was stupid and all this stuff. God bless this kid. And at the end of this 3 days, he just saw, he said, you see the buying into the beliefs of the thought that we have creates the experience or the reality that we encounter on a moment-to-moment basis. And that's the only thing that's ever happening. But to be born is to be consciousness isn't the location. It's not located within the brain. It's not located anywhere. It is everything. But consciousness is nothing you can think your way to. And anybody who finds themselves in a pure state of consciousness, who falls into this pure state of consciousness, the only way it can be done, you cannot think your way to it. You cannot will your way to it. That is the ego trying to see past the ego. But anybody who falls into this state of consciousness will recognize that the story of self, who they think they are, what they recognize as themselves, no longer exists. But they're still there. Aware. Without an agenda, without a care, without any worrying where to be next. There's just a state of presence, and that is what everybody is, bearing witness to the stories that are being created through it. That is what everybody is. It's what everything is. It's what the whole universe is. This whole universe is what you could call a divine thought. It's a dream of energy. It's dreamt into being by an energy that is so uncomprehendable. Science forgets it, leaves it out. Quantum physics is starting to come around to it. But science for many years has just gone, no, we're not going to look at that. That's God, that's religion. And that was one of the biggest mistakes science did, was it split spirituality and study. Because any true science is a study, any science is a study of God, if you want to call it God. If you're all right with that word, if you're not all right with that word, you can call it the creative force of life. In quantum physics, they call it the quantum field. You know, they're pointing to a force that exists, that creates. This is testament to it. But the wise people of throughout time have always called it the dream of life. Dream of life. They were pointing to something. They were pointing to something. They were pointing to something. They were pointing to something, and people couldn't hear it. People couldn't hear it, so they stopped talking about it. In Judaism, they called it das, didn't they? Study of mind. Stop talking about it. People don't understand it. And now it's starting to, I feel fortunate enough to come across it, or for a lady to come across me, or whichever way around it came, I can't remember now. But who came across a man who woke up to this in our time, who then allowed us to hear for ourselves and wake up, however much we've woken up. I've got no idea. Can't measure it. It's just pointless. We've got to find it within ourselves and find peace in our lifetime. Find peace with what is. Find peace with no matter what the world looks like. There is the opportunity of peace. And just to know that is friggin' hell. That's what everybody's looking for. That's what everybody's looking for. It's the only thing people are looking for. Yeah, everybody's one. If humanity woke up to that tomorrow, by the end of tomorrow, the world would not look anything like it does. Fucking hell. Politics would just clean its act up. It would sort itself out. Wars would come to an end. Greed, exploitation.
That's why it's so important to get this out, isn't it?
But at the same time, everything's perfect.
Yeah. I was saying that because that girl that you met, and it's still blowing my mind, that girl that you met, who I met it's just like mine.
Oh, yeah.
That everything must be set up for that exact thing, to meet that person, for you to talk to 3 people to completely ignore you. For me to speak to a woman that didn't even realise that I am.
Explain the story.
So we met this girl down in Devon, and she's from the other side of Manchester. I've never spoken to before in my life. So we spoke to this other guy who's in Devon as well, who I was he said I go off on my own and just go off, and I know someone like that. And he said, oh, you mean Lisa? I went, yeah. I've never even, and then so the next thing he takes a picture of us, me and Claire with it and send it to you, to Dav. So that blows your mind, doesn't it? Thinking, how do they know that? And then, so this girl that we met, she lives like in North Lancashire, and I just never thought I'd see her again. And so we gone out on Sunday and we drove about, and then we parked somewhere. We never go to this place before, and we just said it's that YMCA place. And there was a load of women walking.
And it was
past.
you who wanted to go there, wasn't it? You who said
No, because I said let's go somewhere else, which is like where, so let's go to Ings.
And I said let's sit outside.
Yeah, so then it was really cool. So we should have sat inside. Claire said let's sit outside. Okay, so we sat outside.
Wait a minute. When we drove in there, I said, weirdly enough, the last time I was here, I was with Davinder. It was the guy that you'd met down in Devon.
So we sent a picture to him exactly where you stood.
Yeah.
So it was like, and then we couldn't find somewhere to park, could we?
No.
So I tried, and then Dave said, let's park here. So all that messing about was the perfect time. So then women walked past, and it completely ignored you, and no one ever ignores Dave. So I thought that's really strange.
I chase after people.
Because they'd all gone for a swim, and it was cold water. Is it cold? Just blanked him. Excuse me, was it cold? Blanked him. So I just said to this woman, was it cold? I said, oh yeah. And as she walked up, the other girl said, hiya Mark. And I went, oh my God, what are you doing here? She said, this is Dave and this is Jenny. And it's just, and it was amazing. And then she had to go. And then it was like, then I was trying to work it back from what all the things that would have to happen from the start of the day for that to meet that second.
In that place when we'd already had so many connections to this place with different people that it all just
even the parking bit, like just by a couple of seconds she would have walked past.
No coincidence.
No.
You can
that's the magic
coincidence is
of
a
life, the voice
perspective.
that's in it, the more aware you are, the more stuff
It's amazing,
showing
isn't it?
up. I was listening, me and Jen was sat in the caravan last night, this is totally on taste, so let's just hit it. And I got a ping on my phone, got this voicemail. And as I'm listening to this voicemail, I'm like, when was that from? And it was from Ewan. It was like, oh, hi, just ringing for a catch up, 19th of October. I'm like, why am I getting this message now on the 19th? It's like, whatever, 29th of October. Listening to it again, it starts ringing me through the voicemail that I'm listening to. It's just like, do you know what? I just got a voicemail I never received from you now, like 10 days later, at the same moment you've just decided to ring me. I was like,
It's just mind blowing.
she was just more to life than me, there, isn't it?
And we're starting to wake up to it.
So maybe that's like all life though. That's like everything's just like, I don't know, us all being here now.
Can I just ask, are you all related?
Lisa and I are. Lisa and I are. That's my sister.
Yes, I worked that out last week.
Actually, yeah, we're all related.
It's interesting though, because it's it is in no, you just speak. I was just going to say I'm a gobshite. Sorry, go on. But in all the traditions, it's always been about seeing past the ego. Whatever it's been, even therapy is about, it's working on the ego, using the ego, which is always going to have a finite amount of success. And I mean that with the greatest of respect to all therapists. But when somebody wakes up and touches that space inside of them that is so connected to everything, it's the most magical thing. And when somebody wakes up to that, they realise life is more than what they ever thought it was. They're more than what they ever thought they were. And so these traditions have always tried to point us beyond the ego. Jesus did it. Hinduism, Buddhism was always pointing people beyond it, beyond the ego. Stop looking at what you think you are, because you're not that. Like Jesus said, God is within you, the kingdom of God is within you. God's kingdom is within you, heaven is within you. And that message really got missed. Really got missed. I remember working with Gordell out in South Africa, and we interviewed him. He was a refugee from the Congo, wasn't he? Who broke his back. He's in a wheelchair, and he'd been petrol bombed as a refugee in South Africa, and he started this charity, Redeeming Hope for the Disabled, in Johannesburg, on the edge of Soweto. And he was training to be a Catholic minister, priest. And he'd fallen out with God, because when he broke his back, according to the Bible, it said nobody who's got a physical disability can serve God. So he fell out with God. Why should I serve this God anyway, the judgmental bastard and all that stuff? That's not Gordell's word, that's me totally paraphrasing. He doesn't really swear, does he? He's a beautiful man. And as we spoke about this, you could see this man. He only popped in and out, and he dipped in and out because he runs this charity. So we were talking with all the people there, and some of these people have seen their brothers burnt. They call it necklacing, where they put a tie around the neck, fill it full of petrol, lock a match on it. People have seen their own brothers burnt, raped, killed, one lad had been beaten so badly he was unconscious and he cut his leg off. I mean, God bless these people. That's Mr. T who comes online, comes to join us sometimes. He was here last week. And Gordell, at the end of our 3 days, he said, I found God. He said, I feared God for all these years. God, this thing that was far, far away from man, observing and judging, something to be afraid of. He said, I find it and I don't fear it. He said, somehow I am that God. Somehow I am that creator. And he started walking with the Zimmer frame, didn't he?
He'd already had that insight.
Yeah, so he had started walking with his Zimmer frame.
We'd been told by 4 different specialists that he'd never walk again. He said there was something inside of him that kept thinking, I don't know that to be true, and they don't know that to be true.
That's right, yeah.
So I'm going to try. So then he just started having physical therapy.
Got an exercise bike.
Yeah, and just started doing things. And he said, but before he'd believed what the professionals had told him, and he was just in his wheelchair, and that was it for life. And he said, but he just had this thought, maybe that's not true. He questioned it, and he's just started being able to walk with a frame. And now he can do it with a stick, I think.
Yeah, and then he had his kids, wasn't it? You'd never have kids. And he said, no. And he said, when he looked back, he could see the power of his mind. He said, if I just idly believed everything I was told, he said, I wouldn't have kids and I wouldn't be sat in a wheelchair, which he is, but he can still move and he's strong. The power of this stuff, everybody knows that stress can make you ill. Right? Everybody knows that stress can kill people. They know that. It's widely known. Right? It's widely known. Stress kills. What is stress? It's a feeling state. It's an experience of a feeling state. What's that created from? It's created from a perspective of which we observe something. Work, relationships, finance, future, past, whatever it is. It's created from thought. Stress is created from thought. So everybody knows that stress can kill. That's the power of thought. It can terminate a physical existence in a moment. People die of heart attacks because they're so stressed out. But people don't realise it can do the opposite too. It can heal. Thought can heal. The mind, consciousness heals. But that's not celebrated in, forgive me, this sounds very cynical, but you can sell a lot of drugs to people who are stressed. You can massive industry. It's not really spoken about. But the mind can heal as well. And I think when people start to wake up to this light go down, he started to wake up within himself anyway before. We were just like a little nudge.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say is that what we're doing with the community groups and the work we do is we're trying to describe what is and trying to get people to see what isn't. So it always has been. You've always been it. And we're just trying to point it out to people. Because when we forget that we are that power, he described it as somehow he is that God, he is that creative force. We get very lost in ideas of who we think we are, we get lost in our stories. But even within the loss of being lost in our stories, we've had thought-created realities that have come and gone. We've had upsets that have come and gone. We've had happy times that have come and gone. Like, it was already up and running, it was already true. And the principles are a way of just trying to describe that happening. But they're not new, they're not required for people to have insight, because insight's built in. They're not required for us to have our innate health, it's already there, we just don't know it. So it's just remembering something that we've forgotten. And like, we've got a friend in a rehab, and for ages I had such ego around it needing to be a 3 principles rehab. It needed to be 3 principles rehab. And then all the different things that aligned for this to happen, all the coincidences. He's in a Christian-based rehab. And it's just been amazing, and he's fine. And it's like, how much ego did I have around it needing to be a 3 principles rehab? That's the best one.
Because all the 3 principles is the truth.
And it's like insight is built into us, and what he's been surrounded with is love. And it's been really good for me to see that, because I can get at different times urgent about wanting people to know about this. And when we've worked with some of the youth, I'm like, God, if you could just see this, then your life could be so much easier. But then I'm like, I don't know if at this time there's lessons they're going to be learning that they wouldn't learn if it was all so easy, and that this knowledge is already within them, and it could be realised without me saying a word. And I think you start to see how natural this already is for us. And I think we were speaking today, like, we're quite lucky that we never really were big searchers. We weren't looking for anything. So we get to go along and learn about this stuff in a really just kind of
Without
curious
any
way.
Preconceived ideas.
Without agenda.
That it had to live up to.
Yeah, just in a like curious about life. Like, what can we learn about life? What is this stuff? Who are we? What are we? And like with that open mind, it seems there's been some of the coincidences and the shifts and the things that we've learned. And then you have conversations with people and you haven't even spoken about the 3 principles, and then they start to see stuff. And it's like, people have always described it as if you light up from within and then you're around others, it allows them or reminds them of the light within them. And it might be that sometimes you speak about the principles, but sometimes you might be speaking about the weather or your favourite food. Like the amount of things that you say, it was the best holiday I've ever had, it was the nicest meal I've ever had, and just so much gratitude for life and in the moment. And it seems people light up around that, and that in itself is a gift. Because not everyone's going to want to share this in terms of their job, but we share it in how we show up in the world. And in the insights that we have, we share them just through being us. I always remember, I think it was Dr. Roger Mill saying to me, you know, you are the application of this. There are no applications to the 3 principles. It's not, I feel stressed, now apply the 3 principles. Like, you are the 3 principles in action. They're describing what you are in the best way with words, which can always be clumsy, but they're describing what you've always been and what everything is. And from that point, it's like the open, curious mind. You can see that the true learner wakes up, like, and we learn. And we learn from within life, rather than, you know, thinking it comes from a teacher, or thinking it, like you get to see, like, you bounce ideas off each other, and you, student, teacher, we're all of that. All the insights you've had through observing the natural world and things that you've pointed out to me. And for ages, Dave was telling me about, I'd heard him say it on webinars, you told me in groups, and we were sat in a group like this down in Leon Sea, and he was speaking about what is the intelligence that spans a thorn and a nervous system. Like, how does a thorn know about the human nervous system? And he told this story loads of times. I was like, this is interesting, this is kind of to do with science. And I was like, fuck, he's trying to point us to the invisible oneness, the invisible power that created both. He's trying to point people in a really practical way to God or mind.
Just pure knowledge, yeah.
And it was like, oh, I've heard that story. It must have been about 6 or 7 times by that point. Then at the end, I was like, oh, that story is brilliant. That story is so good. I'm gonna use that. Whereas before, I was like, I wonder why he's talking about this in the 3 principles course. It's a little bit off track.
People often said that. Why do you talk about nature?
Yeah.
Like, we are nature. We are nature. Nature's just the manifestation, the energy, the physical manifestation of God. That's what nature is.
I think you also realised how quick we are to want to talk about our psychology, how we're doing, what we're doing, the insights we've had, and that's fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you saw that it all became very personal, and you were trying to help take it out again. Like, it's not the content of what we think; it's the fact that we think, and it's not just a human thing. And taking it outside of it being human psychology to being something far, far deeper, far, far more interesting than our own story. And it took me ages to see why that was relevant. And we've had people on webinars go at the end, it was really interesting, but why are you talking about that? I want to talk about the fact that I struggle with. I want to talk about my addiction, or I want to
perhaps we have to meet them there. Do you know what I mean? It's like sometimes we do, don't we? We have to meet the individual where they're at.
You've said normally we're quite a good balance, because sometimes I'll be like, whoa, I think we need to just go and listen for a bit and hear some of the story, and then go again. And that there is something about that expansion and contraction that you realise it's both, it's all, not right, wrong, or, but it was nice for me to take thought out of being a human principle, a principle that I understood, to being this power of thought stuff's far bigger.
Thought is a word.
Yeah.
You know, it's like thought is, well, that's a word. And this is where human beings get so addicted to these words, and then we don't hear. You know, we don't hear the message because we hear the words. And everybody is, I could say to, okay, in fact, let's just briefly go around this room. If I say the word God, marks out of 10, how much do you like it? In which case, 1?
Yeah, 1.
Well, I don't see it as God, I see it as something else.
I'm talking about, yeah, okay, but I'm talking about the word God.
I like it, yeah.
Give it a mark.
5.
10.
Five.
10.
5. 10. 4.
7! Yes, thank God for that. I was going to have to do it. Jen?
3.
3.
No, that was on 9.
Yeah, 3.
8.
Okay, who's good at maths? Can you add that up? I'm joking. Sorry to freak you out. You see, one word. You see how everybody hears it differently. Now, this is just one word. This is why communication via language is so fucking clumsy. Who likes the word fucking? Because if you don't, you're really wrong spot. You see, everybody hears a different thing.
It's a
Totally. Everybody hears what they believe.
Yeah.
Okay, so the tool of language is a very clumsy communication. People don't know. People do not know the belief that they carry simply in a word.
I remember my mum and dad have got this beautiful artwork of a writing from the Prophet about marriage, but somewhere in there it says the word God, and I used to hate the word God, and because I'd seen it in there, I completely wrote that poem off. And years later, someone read it to me, and I was like, that is one of the most beautiful pieces of writing I've ever heard. And the fact that the word God was kind of like, oh, it's all right that God's in there now, I would not care. But it's the same word, it's the same noise, but my meaning and my understanding of it's changed. And it is just a word.
I realised, because we used to call it the G-bomb, didn't we? As soon as someone would say God, I'd be like, oh fuck, everyone's going to stop listening now. And then I realised that it's just the word. The word God it's a descriptive word to describe the nothingness that creates the everythingness. It's not even attributed to something, it's just a word. It's a description of that.
It's a noise.
But it's so interesting how I see it now as to how I used to see it, because I did used to see it as the G-bomb, we called it, because it was like, oh God.
Yeah, she used to say to me, you need to stop talking about God. I'm like,
People switch off and
in reality, because you switched off, we think because I switched off, then everybody must have switched off, because, well, I'm seeing reality. People forget they're seeing their own reality. And people are experiencing their own reality. It can be very, very, very easy. It's so easy. It's so easy for me to think that the way I see the world is true. You know, and then I remember, oh, no. The way I see the world is simply an expression of thought in this very, very moment. I live in separate realities continuously. I don't see the same thing over and over again the same. I live in separate realities. Separate realities are born within an individual, not just in a group of people. They're born within individuals. This is an infinite thing continuously happening within people. We're living in an experience of consciousness that really does look like.
It's interesting, this, because if you went round everybody and there was Mark, we gave a 10. Now, if you ask Mark, we gave the highest score, and myself.
So you must have won.
And they go, you know, why did you give a 10? You know, sort of, it's the assumption, you know, why did she give a 10? Is she being religious?
Yeah.
No. I'm a spiritual, yeah, but everything else with it. So I remember a client once said, she said, do you believe in God? And I said, well, my definition is to do it. And she says, oh, you don't then? I said, no, I didn't say that. And I said, but I've got a beautiful dog in the kitchen.
You are dyslexic.
Yeah, of course. She didn't know that though. And I said, well, it's dog, you know, God is dog not spelled backwards, isn't it? And I can spell easy, backwards and forwards. It's great. I wish I could spell forwards. And so it is a word, and it's the assumption. So whoever gave 1, and then 5, 3, you know, Jen gave 3, you go, well, it's a label, you know. Some gave 5, which I found, well, we'll go in the middle. I don't know what people were thinking, but it's interesting. But it's when you say it's just a word, and everything, if you take that as top of the pyramid and then go down, everything is just a word, then that's when everything falls away. Because that is quite a high word. You use it a lot as you know, in here, to give an example, and then with no idea what, because I know some people could be, I work with them, who are very religious, so they go that way, I go the scientific way. And so it's interesting. Yeah.
I loved it yesterday. David was talking.
Because you said you go into it sometimes. I love this, Jane. You said sometimes we've got to go into it, and then we go, phew. You know, you go in again, then you go, phew. I find that one of the best. So powerful.
You could have asked me that question though, probably 2 months ago. I might have given 2.
Yeah.
So it just shows you I changed.
So you gave 10
because I've just know what it means now to me. It's the attachment to me now. But it's like, yeah, a couple of months ago, I might have got 2.
So if you say you are God, people go, ego?
Yeah, ego. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we are, all of us.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, it's funny, we did a webinar, was it yesterday or the night before?
Night
before.
Yesterday.
I can't remember what it was.
Can't remember.
But it was at 6:43. I just where's my phone flash? It was like webinar at 6:45. I was like, shit, we're supposed to be on the webinar. So we legged it upstairs, got on just on time. And it was mostly people from the Jewish community who are doing a deepen and share program down with them. And Dave keeps quoting Jesus and the Bible.
He's my mum.
No, it's all this, and I realise I start thinking, oh, I wonder what people online are thinking. Oh, I know he's really religious. I wonder if and then you're like, God's just a word. We could say this, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if they think he's being derogatory about God, and all of this stuff going on in my head. And then afterwards, we get a message from one of the most religious, actually, out of the group, who's just fallen in love with you, and like he was swearing his head off, and it was just so interesting because I see how much thinking I have about wanting to not use the wrong word and not wanting to offend, and you don't have as much thinking about that in groups. But it was so interesting because the person I thought potentially could be the most offended is the one that texted immediately saying, please come, we want to take you for dinner when you're in London, I love you, I'd love to talk more to you, it's my favourite webinar I've ever heard. I'm like, wow. And so I've realised how much in my life I have tried to edit myself in case I cause offence or in case someone doesn't like a word, and I feel like I'm doing it less and less, and then it's like there's less of you there and you're just with people, and it's easier, and actually you don't know how, and if someone does react to a word, then how do I know that actually them reacting to a word is something helpful for them to see? It's like you can't predict someone else's reality and how it's going to be taken, so just do you. And it was such an interesting example on that webinar, because I could feel myself like, stop it, stop talking about Jesus. Stop talking about Jesus.
They killed it. They really didn't like it.
Have you started reading the Bible?
Don't read now.
The people we've just been working with on the second day we went for a walk, and she said to me, does Dave come from like a Christian religious background? And I said, well, yeah, he's a choir boy, and he was brought up
Shut up, people. I was on Songs of Praise. You know.
And she was like, I thought so. I said, no, but all this stuff that he's talking about now is actually from some lost chapters of Thomas, which is a talk he found online. And she's like, oh, I just thought he was
Beautiful.
Christian. I said, no, I wouldn't class himself as Christian.
No. To me now, and this offends a lot of people, I know, but religion is always after the fact. It's a construction of mankind's mind. It's like money. You know, it's a construction of mankind's mind, and then people forget, and they think it's everything. But no, there has to be something. I remember being on, you telling me about you did a retreat, and then this Jewish lady came up to you and said, "This comes before the Torah." The Bible, the Old Testament, this comes before the Old Testament. She realized that this conversation that we're having is the same conversation that preceded the Torah, so the Bible, the Quran, whatever, because it's all created from thought. This is why this is such an important conversation. This conversation precedes humanity.
A lot of people have said you're speaking the original Hindu faith. And then people have said you're talking the original Christian faith, or you're talking the original. I think I've had Christian, Hindu, and a Buddhist said this is the heart of Buddhism. But we can then get lost on the form created around it. But I think there's always a message that was there in all of these things. So it's very easy to get lost. And I know with the principles, it could become another religion if we hold on to it rather than seeing it as a pointer or a guide.
Isn't it? It's like it's got his little offshoots. People teach it like this. They teach it the wrong way. We teach it the right way, and it's like you see it happens. Ego gets involved. And it thinks it knows something. It thinks it knows something. And this is one of the things Sydney Banks said. He said, don't just say it. He said, really realize it. You truly know nothing. Don't just say it. Realize it's true. We truly know nothing. He said, and only then will you start to see with clarity. Because otherwise we're living in our pre-created ideology, beliefs. Ego, yeah. Living in ego. And one of the things Sydney Banks said was, don't listen to my words. Please don't listen to my words. And it's for this exact reason. Okay, it's not in these words. He said, and if you find argument with a word, he said, change it. Choose your own word. It doesn't matter. It's not in these words. It's within you. It's within you. He said, it's within you. It's not in these words. It's not in this conversation. What we're talking about is the magical force of pure creation, and it is you. Lost and hidden behind a load of thoughts, beliefs, ideas. And that's the only thing that is creating the illusion of separation. It's only an illusion. Nobody's separate from the whole. You can't be. You can't. You can't have God plus one. You can't have totality plus one, infinite plus one. You can't. It doesn't exist.
There's a little kid actually I used to work with, he used to go, you know, in Toy Story, when he says, to infinity and beyond. That's stupid, because infinity is like infinity. You can't have beyond infinity. There's like 7 of you.
Okay. Get him in.
Do you know how to say 3 principles in Spanish yet?
You can't just put a palace at the end of it.
Do you know what I was just doing? I was actually just staring at the freedomthinking.co.uk so I'm thinking, it's the best. It is the
Best handwriting you've
if the
ever
words explain something, that's what it is. I mean, we have many conversations, don't we? Many conversations about when you know how you operate and you know how, well, she says, you can anything whatsoever. when you have an idea of what's going on, there is freedom in you thinking,
What is a thin king?
thinking, what is a thing? Oh, don't stand this way.
Is it the dad jokes again?
God, Dave's turning into my dad, by the way. Warning. It's not a bad thing, my
Is it
dad's
convenient?
awesome.
Is it?
Dave, you're just going to increase your awesomeness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's freedom in not knowing though.
Yeah.
Realising you don't know, there's a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
Talk about that, Mark.
Speaking now, Mark.
Sorry?
Turn the laptop.
Turn the laptop
I
on.
just that's why I shut up when he turned it down.
No, it's
Because I
just-
know you saw something into it.
Yeah, because it's just, once you really, really, really realise that you know nothing, that stops all this worrying about stuff, thinking that, because all stress is just thinking you know something and you think if it's going to be a stressful thought because you're worried about something that you think is going to happen. And if you really realise you don't know anything, you don't feel the stress.
And you're actually closer to the truth.
Because then your mind can quiet down and then you stop all this worry and then you see clearly. Like when I had that about the pen and then I had that feeling that Saturday morning that we were all one and that my uncle had died not so long ago and that I'd been my uncle before my uncle was born. I was my uncle when he's gone. I was my mum before she was born. I just saw it all for a second, just a glimpse of it. And it was big. It was a big insight.
It's massive inside.
Yeah. And then I just got this feeling that we are all one. Shit, we are. We really are all not connected. It is just this infinity and beyond.
And beyond.
Cheers, bud.
Yeah, I think like, as well, sorry, like, like people say, oh, I found it in, like, you were saying how you found it with that drawing, when you sort of like zinged, like you sort of like just got it, and then yours was the pen.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, what you just said there, like, saying about the word, like, how it is from the word, that's your perspective, and then, like, just then, like, how you think with all the stress is gone, like, you know nothing, like, and I've been told that loads, like you've explained before, you get told it loads of times, you hear it, then it's like, oh, I actually just heard it.
Ah,
And do you know what I mean?
that's right.
Yeah, like, it's like, it's
You
like,
see the
the
difference.
same thing again and again and again, and then all of a sudden you go,
Yeah.
it's actually.
yeah.
You can hear it.
You hear it,
Or you can-
you always
or
hear
you
it,
can
but you
hear
don't.
it.
You can hear it.
Yeah,
Or you can hear it.
hear it.
I think that Sophie as well, one of the things she gets wrapped up in, and we all get wrapped up in, is the fact that something's happened and what they think, and this is what's going to happen. And I'm like, well, how do you know that's going to happen? How do you know that that's how it's going to turn out?
You just play it in your mind, don't you?
It's amazing the stories that
You tell yourself.
create.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
How do you know that's true?
I was talking to some friends yesterday saying that we've been saying it the past few days, how it's just, we just constantly live out stories.
Yeah.
That are just creating.
Yeah.
We could be sat on a cup of tea, chilling out, and we could be in a brilliant story about worrying about what somebody thinks of us, but we'll never know anyway.
Yeah.
And
It's like, wow, like, yeah, it's a bit like,
you never know what anyone thinks. Everyone's doing something about themselves.
yeah.
But why is it so much easier? A bad story than it is.
Well, I think we have it all running, but the focus seems to be on the bad,
This is it.
and all of it's perfect.
It's just as easy
It
for
doesn't need to be a reason.
consciousness.
It's just being alive.
It's just as easy for consciousness to create happiness as it is to create fear. It's just as easy. It's made out of thought. And this is one of the things I said to Mark. I don't know if you were here. Talk to me about it. Tell me about the pen.
It writes.
Carry on.
Red.
It writes things. Red. It connects, no, it disconnects, then reconnects.
Keep going.
$3.99.
Keep going. Keep going. That's cool. Whatever's coming into your mind about the pen, just say it.
Lost.
Good fiddler.
You can create things.
Cool. Carry on. Look at the pen. Look at the pen. Look at it. Talk to me about the pen.
It's blue.
Yep.
It's red.
Yep.
It's got writing on it.
Yeah.
But I've not got my glasses on.
Cool.
So I don't know what it says. Viral. Viral.
Oh, it does. Is it?
Does it?
I don't know. Carry on.
It's like a bullet.
It's like a bullet. Cool. I like that one.
Anti-tank missile.
It's like an anti-tank missile. Chuck us that back. Talk to me about that.
It's an eraser for a whiteboard.
Yeah.
It's wooden and tan. It's black. It's brown. It says. Show me. Show me.
Show me.
It's real. It's solid.
Talk to us about that. This is beautiful. Keep going. You're doing really well.
You know, it's phone.
Yeah.
It's a communication device.
Keep going.
It's on 4G probably. It's black.
Yeah.
It's slick.
Yeah.
It fits in your backpack.
Yeah.
That's a catchphrase, I think.
I'm a salesman. It's.
You've got room to store it.
I've got room to store it
Yeah.
in 25. It's got a cover. It's a fantastic piece of technology.
Cool. That'll do nicely. Well done. Right.
We're going to do- Mhm.
Oh, they did, yeah. Yeah.
So there'd be a billion thoughts in that phone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Everything is created in thought. Everything is dreamt into being one way or another. But were you thinking about this pen for a plastic tea?
No.
Okay. Were you thinking about the board? No. Think about the phone. So you hadn't rehearsed any of that?
No.
We're not setting up the room.
We're not setting up.
I'm not setting up the room. Right. It's interesting where we focus our attention, our mind brings us thoughts. Specific, not random. You didn't look at this and go, goose. Goose with a nice rosemary jus and mashed potatoes and polar bears and lederhosen and shit like that. You spoke about the pen. Your mind brought you information about what your attention was on. Same with this. Brought you specific. It's wooden. It's black. It's got show me on it. It's hard. It's this. It's felt. It's that. And same with the phone. You spoke about it so eloquently about. It's in your pocket. It's black. It's slick. It's probably on 4G. It's a marvel of technology. Where you focused your attention, your mind, without you ever being taught to do it, brought you thought. To create identity around it. To create a story about it. Okay. People come to us and they want to talk about their problems. I want to talk about my problem. Well, it's shit. It's like this. It will not leave me alone. It's like...
Dave did this with someone.
That was a different example.
No, but
actually, wasn't it?
he made I'll hold a spoon saying, I don't want to think about my problem. I don't want to think about my
It's in
problem.
a restaurant.
In the middle of
wasn't
this really fancy restaurant, he was smacking himself over the head with this really hard spoon. At the end of
it?
this
It really
speech.
hurt. I was
And
like,
just-
please, will you see what I'm talking about? Because this is really starting to hurt.
She was just sat there looking around going, it looks like we've got you on day release. Dave, stop it, Dave, stop it. You're like, until you see the point, I'm not going to stop it.
This massive lump on my head. But you see it. People have a problem, and what do? They go and study it. Study it within their mind. And what does the mind do? Brings them information about where they are putting their attention. Whatever they're putting their attention on, the mind brings them thoughts. I'm not good enough. Your mind will bring you thoughts to completely and utterly make that appear as though that's so true. It will bring you fact after fact after fact after fact after fact to say that you're not good enough. It will bring you thought after thought after thought after thought. It's not that the mind's malfunctioning, the mind's working beautifully. It's just wherever we put our attention, wherever, what is it you say? Where attention goes, experience flows. Where attention goes, experience flows. So people spend forever trying to fix themselves. Okay, I'm trying to fix myself. Creates the idea that we're broken. Guess what the mind does? It continuously dreams up new rationale for why we're broken. Okay, so why is it that people always get stuck in a negative rut? Because people are continuously focusing their attention on everything that's negative that they perceive. But the beautiful thing is when the mind is not observing those thoughts, and this happens for absolutely everybody on earth, absolutely no exceptions. It's like you speak to people with depression. Do you always have depression? What's it like the moment you get out of bed, the moment you wake up, do you have depression? I've not come across one person who doesn't go, well, for a few seconds I do it. What is it that then creates the depression? What is it that kicks in to create the impression of depression? Well, it's thought.
Oh, I'm depressed.
Yeah.
Remember,
What was I
I'm
worrying
depressed.
about last night?
Yeah.
What was I stressing about yesterday? Oh, there we go. I'm back in it. All the world shit. I'm broken. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's interesting. You do. You start to see that. You start to see it within yourself. This conversation will show you your ego T-face. You start to see the thought that you live out of that is invisible to us until it becomes visible. And when it becomes visible, we laugh at it and go, oh, fucking shit, have I been doing? How long have I been doing that? It's mad. But it is as easy for the mind to dream up beauty as it is for it to dream up pain. It's all thought. Thought is thought. It's not weighted in a certain, it hasn't got a bias towards terribleness. It hasn't got a bias towards suffering. Thought is an infinite field. It has no bias. It just creates. And anybody who focuses their attention on everything that's wrong with them, their mind will continuously bring them information to back it up. But it's no more of a happening than staring at a pen and talking about the pen. It's exactly the same process happening. And when people start to catch on to this, it's like their awareness changes. Shit. Wow. Look what's happening. Look what we do. Look how I think a lot. There's a gap, a little frigging chink in the armour comes and that light shines in. And the moment that light shines in, we start to notice a difference in our lives because it's insight.
You said check yourself before you wreck yourself.
It's a rap song, isn't it?
Check yourself. I don't know why that's popular.
Check yourself. Let's have a brew.
Just come back at 20 past.
Yeah, we'll have 10 minutes.
No, I just keep someone's going on.
How is all these other people? Hiya Lou, hiya Helena, hiya Susan.
How do we not know they were left?
You all snuck on very quietly. It's Lee! It's Lee! You're just cunningly disguised as Lou tonight, dude. Oh, beautiful. How you doing, Susan?
Sorry, I didn't ask anyone else their numbers of God.
Yeah, we didn't know everybody was on.
Good, thanks. You guys good?
Yeah, good. Really good.
I don't know how everyone snuck on without it saying ding dong, ding dong, ding dong.
I don't.
Like it normally does.
Who's that, Helena?
It's Molly.
Is that Molly? Oh, it is Molly. Hello, Molly.
Molly. You good girl.
Good girl. Oh, give her a squeeze from us. We haven't paused this. It's really slim down again.
Just want to see if anyone online has questions, you can either unmute yourself or write it in the chat, or if there's anything you want to add to the discussion, you can unmute yourself or write it in the chat. Sorry, we didn't know you were there. Like we thought Anna was the only one online, so we didn't even get to ask you
Centre of the universe.
where what number God was for you or anything. Sorry, there's like 6 other people.
What number is God?
5 other people online. We didn't know they were there.
Nobody. Yeah, it's 155.
Yeah.
I reckon this is some kind of code. I reckon.
80. That adds up to.
18.
Well
Well done, Rain Man.
Right, it is an art, It's over confidence.
Politician.
No, because I'm not got a big ego.
Has anyone in the room got questions or comments?
What's that big smoke for?
Well, why do you think?
I just got it. I just thought I got it. Just ring.
How nice is that?
I know. Pretty awesome.
I'm hoping to see this smile for about 2 or 3 days.
It's really a nice smile. It's cute. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful when people start to see stuff. The thing is, once you've had an insight, it takes the pressure off you needing to do anything about it. Right? It's like, I want to get this, 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 I'm not getting this, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting this. It's like, it's just what the mind does. It's like, it will continuously confirm. But until, for that brief split moment of a moment, it's like, there's a break in ego. There's a break in belief. The belief just separate. This is all metaphorical because I'm trying to put it into a picture, but it's not. And words. In a brief moment, our ego ceases and something new comes through. It can't not. Consciousness cannot not create. It's always created. So it's like in that brief moment you get an insight, and it's like it's that, well, I've heard this, but I've heard it.
Yeah, I've listened.
You've heard as opposed to listening. Yeah, heard as opposed to listening. Yeah, exactly like that. I've heard as opposed to listening.
No, you're saying you've listened as opposed to just hearing.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same conversation.
You were the opposite of what she was saying.
Yeah, but I think you're actually coming from a
Same
different
thing.
angle.
Yeah.
At the same point. And it's like, but once you've had an insight, you know that it does not lie in intellect. This willing and trying and intellectual analysis is of no value to this. This conversation is no value if it stays in the head and never makes its way to the heart, as you could describe it. Head, it's what people speak of it as head and heart. You know, it's like, I heard it within my heart. And this conversation is of no value until it drops from here into the heart. That's simply an insight. It's knowledge from beyond the intellect.
That was me. The one thing you asked me, Dave, I'm not getting this. Dave,
Yeah.
I'm not getting this. Mark, there's nothing to get. Yeah, but I know that, Dave.
I know there's nothing to get, but I'm not getting it.
Then she said, we'll have to, I'm afraid now I'm going to forget it.
Oh yeah, you'll forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when you have an insight on something, you just want to hold on to that feeling, don't you?
Yeah.
You want it just to stay there, but it goes.
Yeah.
But you've got the memory of it.
And what does that, Jane, talk about that bit you're talking about there?
The insight
it's like you just, like I said, you just want to hold onto it. You want it to stay all the time, but it doesn't.
Yeah, but you've got the memory of it.
Yeah.
You see, this is where memory, people think memory is the enemy. No, memory is beautiful. We have this thing, Keith and Valda, a couple of friends of ours, it's like they describe hindsight, memory as insight. Hindsight is insight. It's like you can have these experiences. It's not that you live in the same experience of that forever. I mean, eventually, that might become a little bit tedious. Like you might get to the point where you're like, I want a bit of adventure now. I want to feel a bit of shit. I want to play with life a bit again. But I was just finish this sentence. I was just going to say, but you will forget, as we all do. But the beautiful thing is, you will remember as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, like you said last week that it's like so each time you'll like chip away, like you'll get all muddled up, and then you'll go, oh wait, but then it's like it'll be less time that you know every time to come back every time. So like it's not worrying about it because then that's the fine.
And it's all known.
It's all yeah.
But you've heard truth now.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing, because now you know that's true.
Yeah.
Because before you're just hoping it was true and like, but now you know, you've heard truth.
Yeah.
And it didn't come from us, you heard it within yourself.
Yeah, you were telling me but it wasn't teaching me.
You've learned. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You and my person said, it was years ago, about 4 years ago, I said it's like taking a big coat off and drop it on the floor and like made of lead. Yeah, he said, I think it's like you find a thread and it's snagging and it's just going up and unraveling and getting lighter and lighter. The more you live, the more you realise it's just unthreading. And I really like that. The sort of, some people just, the coat just drops off and it's like, and then you might like start constructing another sleeve or something, and then you're like, oh shit, this isn't very well. And you like get it off again. And I think that's what it's, and we're always stitching coats.
We're always stitching coats.
It's the meaning of life.
I like that.
That, isn't it?
Yeah, that's nice. I like that though.
It's nice with the 16-year-old would just be
It's not a straight jacket.
He just said, we asked him how he found it on day 2, and he just said, this is true. And I think when he said that, we'd not spoken about this is true and this is false or anything like that, but that's just what came to him. He said, this is true. And I think that's sometimes the moment where he knows there's something in it and he wants to explore it more. It was nice to not have an agenda or need him to be anything other than what he was, but he said, this is true. This is true. And also he'd been telling us about what they've been taught at school, and he knew that was not true. What's it called?
I probably should say the name.
Oh, okay. That's good. Some kind of thing that's gone into the school. And it's telling the kids, basically teaching that they're all victims, and that teaching them about self-harm and suicide and things to prevent it. But he said it's like it's putting it in people's minds. And he said to him it didn't make any sense at all.
They'd gone into this
you
school.
can see that they're for good intentions.
Yeah, he said they'd gone into the school and they'd written raps about how shit life was. And then people had asked them to remember the worst time they could think of. So what does the mind do? It looks at the worst time it can think of, and it experiences it as a reality in that moment. And then he said, half the girls burst into tears and ran out of the room. He said they lost everybody. The class just disintegrated as everybody was like stressed out. Kids were worrying and crying. And
what school's that? I ain't sending my kids there.
Right, and it's a long way away. But it's gone in.
Yeah.
It's going in. But
I just saw actually on Facebook that iHeart, which is the charity that shares this with youth, is in conversation with someone in the House of Commons now. Got a meeting. in the next few weeks. Because their dream, they've just done a massive fundraiser, and I think they managed to make £240,000 to get this into more schools. But their dream is it to be part of the curriculum in primary and secondary. So it's just part of the curriculum that you learn about your own resilience and your own nature.
How cool is that? Because this is it. It's like people, when people don't understand the nature of life, they fear it. Human beings fear what they don't understand. This is why so many people are afraid of the future, worry about the future. We don't understand it. It doesn't even exist. But we fear what we don't understand. And so imagine the whole scenario is, I don't understand how life works. The majority of humanity walks through life not having a frigging clue that the only reality that is ever experienced in their life is consciousness brought to life with thought as a reality, as an experience, as a feeling state. It's the only thing that's ever happened. The majority of people never wake up to that. And so they will have gone through their lives feeling affected and never satisfied with where they are, trying to be. So this is one of the things we spoke to with this kid. It's like he was so tied up in how well he was going to do in his exams. But I listened to his mum. And as I listened to his mum, the moment she walked in her house, she took one look at Lisa's caravan. She said, "Oh, sorry, I thought you lived in a caravan." I thought, well, these people aren't very successful. And then as she sat down, she said, I thought, well, my sister, she's the successful one. We heard the word successful thrown about a few times, didn't we? And I'm looking at this kid who's hell-bent on being successful.
Terrified of failure.
Terrified of failure. And I spoke to him about, it was something Mum said. It's about 6 months ago. She said, "You went to prison, Dave, because I was attacked." And I was like, "Oh, Mum was attacked by a man who'd already been done for rape, or was like being suspected of rape." Was it about 6 months we had before I was born?
Yeah, down an isolated little lane.
Well, down the end of our lane.
Yeah.
We were just past where we live in Plantation Bridge. I was walking to work and she was attacked. A man tried to drag her into a field and she fought her until the lady that we know now, we didn't know her then because we weren't born, was driving along and she came across this happening in the road and the man ran off. He was caught. He went to prison. But my dad always said, you look after your family, you protect your family. I was brought up with that. Believe.
Your mum said he changed after that. That's where she thinks it came from for him as well.
Is it?
Yeah, she said that thing happening to her made him change and get more protective and then instill that in him.
Yeah, and he instilled that in me, and like it was a belief I idly never questioned. And one day my sister turns up at work, 1 o'clock in the morning. I was working at the Gateway Inn pub. We turned up, chunks of hair missing, and she'd been attacked. And of course, the only thing that occurs to me is sort this out. Sort this out. No other option. There's no other option at this point. It's like, sort this out, look after your fucking family. And drove around town and he pointed out who it was and like, cool, let's sort this out. Dead arm, dead leg later, a lot of intimidation. It was a woman. A lot of intimidation later. Police arrived, I'm arrested. Suppose went to magistrates, they wanted to give me a year in prison. Oh, they wanted to give me over 12 months in prison, so I had to go to Crown Court, but they gave me 4 months. But Mum said, "You went to prison because I was attacked." And I was like, "How did you figure that out?" She said, "Because your dad instilled in you the belief that you must protect your family." And it was the same thing I could see in this kid. This kid, and I mentioned it to his mum, I said, "You talk about success an awful lot." And here we have this young kid listening, looking up to the parent, guide me, guide me, guide me. And now he's stressed out. When Mum told me that, thankfully when I woke up to this in that moment of awakening to the nature of consciousness and seeing it for myself in an insight like yourself, It was like that ego in me died. The ego who I used to be died. It was not that I had to work on the ego, it simply vanished because yeah, my coat fell off, my coat fell off. And I became a very different human being. It wasn't through effort, it was just through witnessing what is true. And from that knowledge, that remembering, you get to bear witness to what's made up. Well, what's made up is the experience we live in every single moment. It's all an illusion. It's all an illusion. And it's like looking at this kid and seeing him hell-bent on success, and failure is not an option, and listening to his mum. You see how these kind of messages get passed between families, throughout the families. Nobody sees it. It's invisible because it's a thought. It's a thought. So people don't see it. But when people start to wake up to this, it's not that we actually need to see our beliefs. My mum described it like this. She said, she's not here to defend herself, so I can, well, she's cool, I love her. She said, see you God. God's telephone number's gone, everyone. Hey?
There's a God himself.
There he is. Mum said, it was beautiful. She said, I see it like this. She said, I was born, I came into being as a physical being. She said, I was born into this infinite potential. And she said, and then throughout my life, she said, I started to listen to people, believe what I'm told. I started to create my own beliefs. I believed what I read. I started to believe this is a gift of life. We are given the gift to believe. It's not something we have to learn to do. Nobody taught us how to believe. Nobody taught us how to think. This is just the natural occurrence of power of consciousness. And she said, but before I knew it, she said, I'd taken this infinite potential. And she said, each belief looks so real and so solid. She said, it simply looked like reality. What I believed, I saw everywhere. And she said, it was like each belief was a brick placed around myself in this infinite potential, until before I knew it, I'd created a tunnel around myself, and I'd become narrow-minded and tunnel vision. She said, I saw what I believed. And she said, but as I listened, it took her a while to start to listen, didn't it? But she said, yeah. As I started to listen, she said, I noticed some of these bricks dropping away. And she said, I started to see things afresh. She had noticed I'd walked down the street and somebody who I always thought was a bit weird, she said, I didn't see the weirdness. She said, I just saw a person. I saw new things in. She said, work, I always thought this customer was a pain in the ass. She said, but all of a sudden I started to see that, no, they're just a person experiencing life in their own way, in their own experience, in their own reality. And that, their reality looks as true to them as mine does to me. And she said, before I knew it, these bricks had started to fall off. She said, I didn't have to work at it. She said, I just had to see what it was. And Mum now, God bless Mum, she's friggin' awesome as a lady. Like, she's so insightful and beautiful. But it was, and then we're back in this infinite potential again. We're back in this unknown. An unknown is freedom. I used to think knowledge is power. I've got to know everything to be safe. I didn't know it is not power. It is confinement, it is ego, it's restriction, it's incarceration. That's pretty similar to the cell I used to live in. It's incarceration. And it's all because we think we know something when we simply are actually just believing. The truth will set you free. And we looked at have you ever heard of NERD, the band? Have you heard the song Lemon?
Pharrell Williams is
Pharrell
into
Williams.
it. Yeah.
Have you heard the song Lemon?
No, but I'll listen to
It's
it.
Rihanna, with Rihanna. It's called Lemon. He says, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. And I love that. Yeah. This makes no sense.
One of my best friends started to hear something and she just sat in the car. She went, I'm really scared. I said, why? She said, because everything that I believe and everything that I tried to help myself now doesn't make any sense. It's too simple. And I can remember sitting in the car with saying, it's all right, hang on to what you want. And what you don't will just go anyway. You don't need to worry about any of it. I'm trying to be somewhere other than where you're at.
It's like you say, it's so simple, but before you get the inside, it's so complex, and you listen, you don't understand the word of it, until you get that insight, then you go, oh, it's so simple.
It's clear as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I love about you, Mark? I love where life has brought you. As in, Mark used to drive past my mum and dad's house where we all live again now. In our compound. I live in the garden.
She lives at the back of the garden.
In my unsuccessful caravan. I don't know anyway, and Mark drove past and kept seeing David Jennings' Freedom Thinking sign.
I think you've seen a video first, haven't you?
I'd seen it on a video, yeah, and then I just kept seeing this sign because it's a shortcut, isn't it? You turn left and that we've got to go that way into Kendal, and I kept seeing this sign. What the fuck is this?
It's from Bolton.
Manchester. They're like, what is this? What is this? And then I went and looked again, and then it just all like again. Now I know it all made sense, but then I just thought, why do I keep seeing this? But it's all like dropping into, and it's like a little chip. Like I think someone's chipping away, and you get little bits now.
It's like slamming going that way. No,
The funny thing is, we've just done a video. We're out in South Africa. We've just made a video about our retreat. Finally, because we've been talking about advertising it for ages. We hate doing online stuff. We put it up on Facebook, and within half an hour of that, you guys booked. And I was like, see, when we put some effort in, people book on. And I was like, how did you hear about it? You're like, well, I just drove past the sign, went on your website and booked it. I was like, so you didn't see the video that we did? It took us like 10 times. And you're like, no.
Yeah, I was doing it. We're doing this video over and over again. Jenny's like, you serious? I'm not doing it one more time. Seriously, that was crap. One more time. She's like, I'm not doing it one more time. And there's a photograph of like the photograph of the video on YouTube. The front picture that you click on is Jenny looking at me. And who was it who said that? I think it's Nat looked at it. Nat looked at it and she said, oh, look, you can see the love in your eyes. And Jenny was like, I wanted to kill him. Separate realities. No, I wanted to kill him.
It's funny, on Tuesday night we did go to an amazing class with one of my friends, and I literally left this class, it's like a dance class, it's like that. Since I was 19 years old, it has to have been the best class, the best music, the best choreography. Oh my God, what did you say? Oh my God, it was the best. My other friend came out, she's like, that was a bit boring. And I was like, joking. And it just, you've got like 20 people experiencing the same thing. I hit the high beam, I was like, and she was like, nah. Is that right? And I love that. I don't know what it is that makes us, well, obviously, but you know, the variety of life and experience of the same thing is just amazing.
Cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's just so cool.
It's like when we did watch the video, and I said, we're going to that. I have to meet him. I have to meet this guy. And it was
Then you realise it's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We lost our girl.
I think you'll find it funny.
You probably just feel each other's weirdness.
Feel each other's weirdness. But Sid Banks said, he said, you know, if you are ready to wake up to truth, he said, you could be in the middle of the desert and what is it? Somebody will show up.
Someone will show up, or it will just show up in you.
Yeah. It's all there. It's all there for the taking. It's like, and he said, it's not hiding from you, you're hiding from it. You're hiding behind an idea or concept of what we think we are. That's the only thing. It's only a thing. This, that's a belief, that's a thought. Separation is a thought.
About hiding, one of the things that you said to me, which was one of my insights when that was last year, was something about somebody had said, hide it well. Do you remember?
Oh, yes, the old.
What was it?
The old.
Let's hide it under your nose.
No.
I think I read it from the Bible.
Native American thing.
Yeah.
Doran once read it out.
Yes.
Like, hide it inside them, because that's the last place they'll
Yeah,
look.
yeah. They don't see inside them. Let's hide it where they won't find it.
Yeah.
We're gonna, I can't remember what it is, but that was a big thing for me.
Yeah. That's it. It's like, it's true. We are it. Everybody's it.
You're not going to look at you either because you're out there looking for it
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah. We go looking for it in all kinds of things. We go looking for it in this conversation. It's not in this conversation. This conversation's words. It's a guide. It's a signpost. We often say it's like when we're going to Grasmere. It's like you don't walk up to Grasmere, the sign that says Grasmere, and go, "Oh, I'm here." Fucking, that looks nothing like what I thought it would. You look at where the arrow's pointing. You go, "Oh, Grasmere." That word is pointing me in a direction to look and travel. Right. Ah, yeah. Okay. Then we go to Grasmere. And it's like with all words, it's like they're merely a pointer or a guide. All these words are just a pointer or a guide to look within ourselves and wake up to the nature of what we are and what life is.
But you have to follow that because I knew for some reason I had to do that again. And I found it through you, through myself, but I followed the guide to, something told me to meet Dave, and I had to. And then I knew, even though I wasn't getting it, and I'm thinking, I'm not getting this. Why am I getting this, Sue? I'm not getting this. But then something kept saying, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going, because it's there. You know it. So there was a guide to meet you, to bring it out in me, like you say. But so you did help me to get it out.
We can only guide.
Yeah.
That's it, though.
But if I had to listen to you, I wouldn't have got it.
Who knows?
Well, yeah, I don't know.
And it couldn't be any other way.
Yeah, that's me overthinking stuff.
It couldn't be any other way.
I loved it because every time you walk past, I can give you a hug, and you're a bit like,
Yeah.
hugging me. That first retreat, you're a bit like, keep hugging me.
I've got a gay son, he doesn't hug me this much.
But like what you were saying, Dave, once you kind of get that chink in the armour, call it, or the chink in the tunnel, you're just in an infinite pot of forever learning.
Yeah.
We can't. It doesn't stop, and it's like.
Can you say that again a bit louder?
Keep going and going and going and going and going.
Say that a bit louder. Say what you said, but a little bit louder.
Yeah, no, I'm so
Once you get the chink in your armour.
Yeah, once you get a chink in your armour, the learning never stops. You can never. Oh, yeah, I've got this. There is none of that because you
just
don't
it's
get
open
blown
up,
up
and
again.
it's open up a world of
Blown again.
possibilities. Yeah.
Blown again.
Yeah, and stuff you wouldn't have seen. You just gone past it. Oh, that's nothing. Now you think, you see more. There are signs that when you're open to it, you can see these signs. As before, when you're in your head, you don't see them. Mm-hmm. There could be a whisper saying, "Look this way, look that way," but you're too to think about it, all the shit. But now when you quiet your mind, you see there's signposts all the time.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we all talk about it all the time, which is actually it's a real lesson when we've all got. There's quite a lot of us in this room, and we've all got something to conversate with and chat about this stuff because it's fascinating once those bricks do drop off, how much life opens up and how much more experience you get from this life that we've got. And it's a real gift. Life is a real gift. Once you realise that it's all just as is, when it is, how it is, and the constant flow of change.
The perfection of life.
Yeah, and we were talking the other day about if we look back over our lives, which we've said hundreds of times, and all the stuff that happens that has felt wildly uncomfortable, won't change any of it, because the magic in those places,
The gifts in that.
in those experiences that just never stop.
It's a very different come from, isn't it? It's like so many people spend their lives avoiding difficulty and hardship and pain. But to the individual who starts to wake up that they're not what they think they are, all of a sudden difficulty, hardship and pain is like, come on then, what are you going to teach me? What am I going to learn at the end of this? There's something I'm not seeing about life. And you start to, that all of a sudden difficulty, hardship and pain isn't a problem. It's like, fucking hell, life's quite difficult at the moment. It doesn't feel nice. But it's like, you know that there is the potential of a gift at the end of it, this gift of realization, the gift of renewing, the gift of refreshing. And it's like, life, when an individual doesn't fear, they're free.
It's like Sophie, you answered your own question.
Yeah.
You said, Mum, why has this happened to me? And then in the same breath, she said, I know why it's happened to me because it's my lesson. I just thought she's getting it. She's actually knowing that why is all this shit happening to me? And why is this happening? And why is that happening? So she went from tears to like, because it's a lesson that I'm learning, and that's why it's happened to me.
Like all of life's a lesson.
It's all a lesson. Yeah.
It's one thing that we'll learn.
About the ego as well, like, I can't remember exactly, but I just went, oh my god, all of that. Because my ego is getting in the way. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, yeah, I've got to just.
Why does it always happen to me? And how do you do it? It's life.
Yeah.
Once you get it, it's
Yeah.
like whatever. You don't go looking for it anymore, do you? Or
No.
you just let it be, and it just ebbs and it flows, and it's just.
And it grows, and it grows within yourself. It's like when you look at yourself, if you could just imagine for a moment, who are we without a memory? Who are we without the memory? If you speak to somebody with Alzheimer's, no memory, ask them who they are. And it's like, who are we without memory? Without the ability to remember and tell a story about who we think we are. Who are we? It's a very abstract question. It's like one of those things that gets your head rattled and you're like, can't get my head around that. No, because that's part of the story. Everybody's the same thing. The individual experience of life does not suddenly go. Have you anybody watched Thor? Anybody seen Thor, the Marvel film, Thor? Where they throw those things and the person goes, disappears into nothing. We wouldn't do that. There would still be a presence of observation and awareness in life. That's what we are. The suffering is a story. The joy is a story. The excitement is a story. Reality is a story. Separate realities is a story. This conversation is a story. It's none of this. What we are is a universal force. Everybody is that when they've forgotten. When you have two people who were to completely, if you could get two people who could completely and utterly forget their life. One, they won't be able to communicate because they've forgotten how to speak, forgotten what language to use. But if they could communicate, they would be saying exactly the same thing. I am that. That experiences. And everybody would say, I am that. That experiences. The tree is that. The plant is that. That experiences consciousness. Infinite potential. Everything we think we are is the ego. The ego is a ball of memories. That's it. What we think we are is a ball of memories. It's a story. We made it up. Poor me, poor suffering me, hard time me, life's hard me. It's a story we've made up. That's all it is. It's a ball of thoughts. Appearing as a reality because that's what it does. That's its job. That's the game of life. To the individual who starts to wake up to it, everybody can wake up to it. Not everybody will. Some people are so frigging adamant. Nah, this is bollocks. So adamant, like, I'm not listening to you. What do you know? One young lass, God bless her, she came to work with us, didn't she? She'd attempted suicide 3 times. She was 16. She's been in therapy since she was 7. She did a 3-day intensive with Jenny and I. And we do it over 3 days for a really specific reason. It's because day one, people come in and they're like, this is, head's busy, chattering away. Have you ever noticed if you're listening to somebody and all of a sudden you start thinking about something, you stop listening, you can't hear them anymore? Thought has no audible capacity. It's not heard in the ear, it isn't thought, but it's louder than the language, than words that are spoken to us. So day one, this is what we find. People are busy-minded. They're so busy trying to figure it all out. Oh, this sounds like Dave's a frigging God botherer. Oh, this is Buddhism. This is Taoism. This is whatever. Oh yeah, I've heard all this before. All this talk. When are we going to get around to the problem? We'll talk about this problem. Guys, all this noise. Day 2, this young girl turns up and she goes, "Got to tell you whereabouts I'm at." She said, "I don't know who the hell I'd listen to you." Into prison. Not really had a very successful life. And I don't know why I'd listen to an ex-anorexic. Is that what it was? And we were like, okay. That's what's showing up for you right now. That's what you are experiencing as your reality. Cool. All right, so look, bear with us. We do this over 3 days for a specific reason. Because this is what we kind of expect. We expect people not to understand. We said, but we hope by day 3, you'd have had a chink in your armor to allow you to know that there is something more true than your story, than who you think you are. And it is within you. And at lunchtime, this girl, we were chatting away and she just burst into tears. She was crying her eyes out. We said, right, cool, let's have a brew now, let's have a break. So we had a break and went for a wander down the garden, didn't we? And I said to her, "Do you mind me asking you why you were crying?" She said, "No." She said, "I was crying for 2 reasons." She said, "Firstly, I realised I'm not broken. I'm absolutely fine." And she said, "Secondly, I'm so pissed off that I've spent since the age of 7 in therapy talking through all my problems when they only exist as a thought." And then from that afternoon and the next day, she was engaged. She was listening. She could hear. She could hear what was being said. It wasn't getting stuck in her ears. She was open. She wasn't trying to get anything from this. She was just listening, and then within herself, realization was emerging. And everybody is that. Benny, thanks for joining us, man. I've got no idea when you joined. It didn't go ding dong, but thanks for joining us, buddy. Was it not? We're just finishing, but thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing, big man? You well?
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, man.
Good. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Pleasure, man. Pleasure.
Looking forward to coming down to London.
Of course. We're going to feed you.
Mate, we're there. Feed us and we don't leave. We're like cats. No, really. My mum once fed me. I never left. Actually, I left for a couple of years, then I went back. 40 now.
Have you tasted my dad's cooking? Oh,
Yeah,
you know.
Has anybody online got any questions? Susan shaking her head. Anna, any questions, love? Shaking her head. Benny, any questions, my friend?
Just came in. Not yet.
Well, we'll let you know when these are on again. Are we doing one next week? Not here next week. When will the next one be?
The week beginning the 24th, whatever that week is, when the Thursday is that week.
25, 26, 27?
I think. Ish.
I got that.
I don't know exactly.
We know we're like it pass. We know we can't count to 3. Is it?
28.
See?
28.
So I think the next one will be on the 28th of next month. Is it this month? Next month. 28th. Is that right? Wow. All right. Is there any questions in the room? Speak now or through the whole. Well, until next time. Or you can contact us.
I just wanted to ask, just for a minute, I've ummed and ahed about whether I was going to say this or not. We've had some friends in America have some really sad news this week, and I just wanted to just do a minute silence, and if we could just hold the Gleason family in our hearts, or send a prayer, or send some love, that'd be amazing. So if we could just do it for a minute before we leave. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everybody online. Thank you for being with us. And yeah, thank you, everybody in the room.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.